Rotarians and guests, I'm Joe Avella, President-elect of the Hudson Rotary. I would like to call upon, back from the sunny south, I would like to call upon Ed Sogan to give our invocation.
I can't tell you how great it is to be back. Literally, I can't tell you how great it is. We bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we are thankful for this day, for its blessings, for its opportunities, and its challenges. May we appreciate and use each day that comes to us. We pray for strength and guidance in all our actions and deeds. May we strive towards service above self and shine a light on the good works of Rotary. May we be challenged to always give our best with you leading the way. And all God's people said, Amen.
Thank you, Ed. And for our Pledge of Allegiance and four-way test, Evan McCauley fulfilling some of his duties as a new Rotarian.
All right, let's go ahead with the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the four-way test. First, is it the truth? Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
Third,
will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth,
will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Okay, thank you, Evan. You don't have to lead the song. We're going to call it out. Let's take Parasol to do that.
This morning we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to sing America. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the Pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Good.
Okay, back. And now, our secretary, Chris Parker, will introduce our guests.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. I would like to announce our guests with us today, and if they could please stand so we can give them a warm welcome. First, we have our speaker, Becky Moreland, founder of Rehab Ministry of Hope. Thank you for joining us. And then again, helping us on AV from Hudson Service Learning is Allison Renz. Thank you, Allison. And then Jim Ahern has a guest with him today, Bill Homejack. Bill, thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So we'll get started with our meeting and continue on. And Evan, I'd like to call upon you. Evan is going to give his 5-minute bio as a new Rotarian.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Is this loud enough? The mic? Okay. Sorry about that. I thought it was loud enough. So I've been here for a couple months now, and really just want to say thank you for being so welcoming to me. And when I mean that my life has changed in the past couple of months since I joined Rotary. And it's with you guys welcoming me into the committees. I've been able to participate in the speech contest. I'm working with the gala right now. And quick plug, I hope that everyone is reaching out to their businesses in town and making sure that that they know about the gala and that they know that they're invited and that they really know about the charities that it's benefiting. So get to work on that, and we're going to have a great gala this year. So for my bio, I'd like to tell you a little bit about where I'm from, where I've been, where I'm now, and where I'm going to be in the future. So I grew up in Stowe, as you guys know, and my family life, I've been blessed with a nice family. I have an older brother, an older sister. Now I have 2 nephews. One is 5, his name's Brady, and the other is 9 months old, and he's Declan. And it's just been a great part of my life to be a little bit more involved with them, being back in the Hudson community. So I was blessed to have a good family and have the support to go to Western Reserve Academy for high school. While I was at Reserve, I was a varsity golf captain. I participated in phone-a-thons to raise money for our annual fund. And the real takeaway that I have from my time there is just the sense of community that I have. I got to know some excellent people, and the alumni committee that we have, it keeps people involved. So it's a part of me that I'm going to have for the rest of my life, so it's more than just a high school education to me. After that, I went to Miami University down in Oxford, Ohio. I studied supply chain and operations management, which I'm not doing at all right now. I mean, that's usually how it is. I mean, you just got to get your degree. And the reason I chose that is because all facets of the business were involved, all entities along the supply chain. So I got to know basically how business operates, and that's what I was there to do. From there, I went out to Chicago. I wanted to get some experience in sales. And what I learned during my time gaining that experience is just how to communicate with people. It's not complicated. People say they hate sales, and it's not complicated. You have to be able to communicate with somebody, identify a problem, and have a solution to that problem. So that's basically what I do on a daily basis. I'm working on a team at Merrill Lynch with my father. He's been there for over 30 years, and I'm going to be here for the next 30 years. So what that means is, sure, that's a great experience on paper, but what that really means is that with our clients, I'm going to be there for them during the next 30 years. If somebody's 60 years old, I'm going to be there for them through their retirement and to make sure that their children and that their family are taken care of. And what we do on a daily basis is we believe in the importance of financial comfort, and that can mean a number of different things to people. So again, there's the communicate part. You got to get to know them. So that's what I am doing right now on a daily basis. I'm getting to know people in the community and finding out if we might be able to help them. So day-to-day basis, I'm cold calling people. I'm coming to events like Rotary. I'm getting involved in the chamber. I'm going to networking events, and basically however I can get in front of people to communicate with them. So that's what I'm doing now. Again, I'm going to be here for 30 years. I've found my career, and some things that I'm looking forward to right now are owning a home in the next 2 years, joining a country club in the next 2 years, and just becoming more involved in Rotary and local community organizations. And again, just going back to the beginning, I'm very appreciative and grateful to have all of you, and thank you very much for changing my life. I look forward to getting to know all of you a little bit better.
All right.
Thank you, Evan, and we are very grateful that you are a member, and I know your clients will be well taken care of. And thanks for the little plug on the gala. If you haven't seen the Hudson Hub today, check it out. We have a full page or a large photo and an article about the gala, as well as a small photo on the front page. So that's. I'd like to ask Den. Den, can you come up now? Give a short announcement.
Emphasizing the word short. Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, Dan.
Like you, my fellow residents here at Laurel Lake are looking forward to spring. We want to get out walking, even on Wednesday mornings. As president-elect of our resident association here, I have been designated to ask for your consideration. Unfortunately, last Wednesday, when we had the Clock Tower Club here as our guests, they were clocked. Yes, even old farts have laser guns. as well at well over 20 miles an hour, which is the local speed limit. Now, you and I understand that they are an undisciplined lot, and we are forgiving, no question about it. And I know that I can count on you to keep it down as you arrive at our morning meetings. My fellow inmates here, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I mentioned in my memo to you yesterday the Rotary Leadership Institute. It's held once or twice a year. It's open to any Rotarian that's interested in leadership and assuming a role in club leadership or in Rotary district leadership. It's going to be on Saturday, March the 28th at the Doubletree Hilton in Independence. It's a 8 to 3 or 8 to 4 program. I attended last year, and it's well worth your time and effort. So if you're so interested, you can see me for more information. So we're going to continue with our program. Our program chair this month is Jim Ahern, and I'll ask him to introduce our guest. Thanks, Jim.
Is anybody talking to the afternoon or the other Rotary Club about this? Because they're meeting here, you know, during for a couple of months at lunchtime, so I'm sure it's all their fault. And one thing, Evan, not everybody can pull off a bow tie, but you do. It looks really good. I'm really excited about being able to introduce and listen to today's speaker. Becky Moreland is the founder of Rahab Ministries, a ministry to women in our area who are victims of human sex trafficking. She's a lay counselor and holds a chaplaincy certificate from Wheaton College. Rahab grew out of Becky's heart to serve the most broken-hearted people in our community. Her own life has been redeemed from the brink of disaster. When she heard a radio program featuring a ministry to prostituted women in Chicago, she knew she had her call in life. She traveled to Chicago to see the ministry and has since traveled across the U.S., Thailand, Cambodia, and Africa to better understand the plight of human trafficking victims. In 2002, Becky founded Rahab and has been a constant presence on the streets of Akron ever since. Becky lives and breathes Rahab. Her life is enmeshed with the lives of those she serves, standing beside them in every major life event. Her compassion is constantly rekindled as she believes that each of us is only a breath away from being in the shoes of one of these broken women. Becky, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. What an honor to be here this morning. And as I'm listening to what you just said, Jim, I'm thinking, it made it sound a little bit like I was one of those women on the streets, and I'm not. But I have to kind of tweak that a little bit. But I was on the brink of brokenness in my own life in many other ways. So what I want to do in the short time that we have is I want to kind of tell you what brought Rahab to life 13 years ago, and where we're at right now, and where I feel the Lord is taking us from here. So we'll kind of stick with that. And I also want to know what questions you might have. So please be thinking about things. I'm very informal, interactive. We'll spend some time at the end answering any of your questions that you might have for us. So as Jim said, yes, I did start the Rahab Ministry, and it's been 13 years this year. Pretty exciting stuff for us. What happened was I had myself been in counseling just through all my own brokenness. I was a single mom. I had 4 children, and it was going nowhere fast, and I just felt like I was on a downward spiral. So I had gone and met with this counselor who was a divine appointment. She and I spent 3 long years behind closed doors in counseling, and she just knew that I had a lot of brokenness in my own life, and I needed someone to come alongside me, which I firmly believe in today. And we mark that as a real point in Rahab Ministries. We need people to come alongside us, and I'll kind of touch on that in just a minute. So this counselor ended my time with her, which was kind of a grieving point for me. And then she said to me about a year later, because we remained friends, she said, Becky, it's time for you to see how you can give back. What do you think you would like to do to help others? And I was at a fairly large church at the time, and I'm looking at all the list of things that they had to offer, and I'm thinking, there's no way I'm working in the nursery, I'm not doing greeting. It's just not my cup of tea. And so I really spent some time trying to figure out what the Lord would have me do. And I remember hearing a story on the radio about a ministry in Chicago called Bridge of Hope. And they were walking the streets of Chicago, meeting with the women out there and just building relationships with them. And for whatever reason, I thought, that's pretty cool. I'd like to try that. So I found this ministry, and I went to Chicago, and I spent about a week with them, just shadowing them and trying to learn everything I could about street outreach ministry. I knew nothing about it. So what I did is I wrote up a really cool-looking plan. I brought it back to this lady who was a dear friend of mine, and I said, this is what I want to do. And she kind of looked at me like I was nuts, but I had this burning passion. This is what I want to do. And someone else had approached me and said, well, do we really have any prostitutes in Akron? And I said, I don't know. We'll find out. So I found out that in a certain area, Arlington Street, you guys might be familiar with it, was the area. Oh, I didn't mean it that way. Unless you want to take it that way. That's the area of Akron that had most arrests for solicitation. So that's where we started. Walking up and down Arlington Street every Friday night, starting around midnight, and just trying to meet the women out there. Now, we didn't have a budget, so what I did every Friday afternoon, I would sit at my kitchen table with a piece of construction paper, and I would cut out these little squares, and I'd fold it over really cute, and I put on smiley face stickers, and Jesus loves you, and then I put my name and my phone number. That was it. So we walk up and down the streets, and I was blown away, I will tell you, that anybody talked to us. I mean, it was like a shock and awe. I said, we're looking at them, they're looking at us, but what are you doing out here at 2 o'clock in the morning? You look like a bunch of church ladies. And we did. But it was amazing to me how many of these women stopped and talked to us. And all I had was this little piece of construction paper, and all I kept thinking is, Lord, what do I do if somebody actually calls me? I had no plan. I had no plan B. I just knew that I was supposed to be out there. And we did that. We would go with 2 or 3 women, volunteers, and we would always take one male. I know this is always the big question. You ever gotten shot or cut or any of that? No, we haven't. But we always had one guy there, and his job was to just kind of watch and to pray. And he stayed out of the conversations, and we would approach the women with a big smile on our face and a piece of construction paper and say, how are you? What do you need? How can we pray for you? We want to be here for you. And what we learned was it was all about relationship building. And we would be there every week after week after week. And we went through the ice and the snow and the cold weather, and we didn't see too many women, but we knew that we had to be out there. As a matter of fact, there's one lady, and you guys might have some bookmarks on your table. There's one lady that, the bottom picture, you see a hand up in the air, and the handcuff is kind of hanging free. She's one of the ladies we saw in the streets, and she would see us every Friday, and she would quickly go down a side street. She didn't want to talk to us. And what I found out later was the reason was she was embarrassed, she was ashamed, but she knew we were out there praying, and she was so excited just to know that we were out there. And she, to this day, is just an amazing young lady. I just love her dearly. So we would always go out there, whether or not we found someone to talk to, we usually did. One of the only times that we had any kind of threat was when a pit bull got loose and came after us. But I hid behind my son, as a brave mother would do, and I didn't get hurt. So we've had those kind of things happen, but we've never been accosted or approached by any of the pimps or the Johns or any of those type of people. Never any danger that way. So that's how Rahab began, just walking up and down the street. I mean, it was so simple. Evan, you mentioned about we have a problem, we need to find a solution. Well, and you're right, I love that you said that. And by the end of my talk today, I hope you guys that will all see the problem. And let me know if you have a solution, because we're working diligently, daily, to come up with a solution. And I just wanted to thank you for saying that. So Rahab began walking up and down the street. We did nothing else. From there, we started going into the correctional facilities. Some of you may be familiar with Oriana House. They have several facilities throughout Akron. They house women that are felons. Most of them are felons. They're non-violent felons, but we've realized that sometimes the streets were empty, and we go, oh, they've probably been arrested. So we would go into the correctional facilities one day a week, and we would take in a Bible study, and we did something that the girls called Jogging for Jesus. And what that looked like is kind of sad. Myself and another volunteer, she and I would go in every week, and we would take a boom box, and we'd have some really cool upbeat Christian music, and we would be up there exercising, and they'd all be in their seats like this, waiting for us to be done. Say, wait a minute, this is interactive exercise, get up. But we wanted them to really start clearing out the cobwebs of their mind and really being able to be sharp by the time that we would sit down and have a Bible study. So that was the second piece that was added to Rahab Ministries. And we still do that. And we go in and we build up relationships that way as well. Any way we could find to touch these women is what we do. Then after that, we came up with this brilliant idea. Somebody brought it to us and said, what about the strip clubs? Those women in there don't want to be in there. And I can tell you that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I can give you all kinds of reasons why. So we thought, well, okay, how will that look? So we started calling on different women's Bible studies in the area, asking them if they would volunteer to put gift bags together for us. And we would say, just put something that you would give your daughter, something pretty, something nice, something girly. And they did not disappoint us. The first time we went to a strip club was just, guys, you can't go with us on that team, sorry. We only take women in when we go. But what we did is we loaded up our cars. We had about 300 gift bags. And they were beautiful. And they have a journal and a pen and a Bible and some lip gloss and nail polish and that kind of thing. We took them right around Christmas time, and we had some real pretty tissue paper in there. We would go driving around Akron looking for strip clubs. And we would we'd go in and say, we've got some gifts in the car, and we'd like to know, how many women do you have here? Can we just drop these gift bags off? And of course, how much do they cost, and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, they're just free. We just want to drop them off. We didn't stay long in there. We didn't even get entrance into some of them right away. But we did get rid of 300 that night. And we had more than we could have if we had more gift bags. And I'm telling you that to say that this is an issue. This is a problem. And when we've talked to some of the women that have come out of that lifestyle, they would tell us horrific stories about being in their dressing room, crying and begging for drugs and alcohol to numb themselves before they had to go out to work. And it was the same thing every week. They just had to figure out some way to get numb. And we see different levels of strip clubs in our area. And it could be some of the ones down on Archwood in Arlington, used to be called Platinum Horse. And that's an upscale place. And these are the college girls that just need a little extra income so that they can get through buying their books or whatever they need for college. Never works out that way. It never works out that way, because then we go from the Platinum Horse, I don't know what it's called today, but down to a place on South Street called CW's. And those are the same women that started over here thinking they would get out after they got a few extra bucks and find themselves years later as has-beens, and nobody cares about them, and they might earn $10 a night if they're lucky. So we see this downward spiral all over, and then you have everything in between. Then I got to tell the story because it blows me away with the strip club piece of this. We got lost driving around looking for one specific club that we were trying to target. And I said, all right, let me just turn around here. And I went down this back alley, and right in front of me was this huge sign that said Lusties. I went, whoa, where'd this come from? So we thought, well, maybe this is where God wants us to be. So we pulled in the parking lot and went inside and found out who's in charge. And it's usually the barmaid, and we talked to them and introduced ourselves and asked them if we could bring gift bags in. And she was kind of like, I don't know, let me ask. So she got the owner of the strip club, and I'm thinking, okay, we're just going to move on from here. He comes up, and I gave him the whole spiel, why we're there and what we want to do. We just want to drop them off. We don't want to, stop any business or anything. And he looked and he said, that is so cool. He said, can I help you bring the bags in? Do you have a business card? Do you have any brochures? Do you have literature? And I'm looking at him going, well, you idiot, I'm trying to close you down. And he hadn't figured that out. But he was awesome. He carried all the bags in, he gave them to the girls, and he just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And we've been going in there now on a monthly basis for probably 6 or 7 years. And we've made great relationships. There's a Bible study that came out of that place from the women. They said, can we just get together and meet and study the Word together? So we're seeing the fruit. But it takes relationship and it takes consistency. So, okay, we've got the street walking outreach, we've got the strip club, and from there we thought, we need a place to call home for these women. So we were blessed. This is just crazy, and a couple of you guys here have been there. We bought a little tiny house in the hood in Akron, right where we walk the streets, and we're a house of like 15, a street of about 15 houses. We're the only non-crack house on the street. There's brothels, there's crack houses, there's chop shops, everything in these little 15 houses. And then there's us. So we bought this house and we thought we need to strategically be there so that these women can get to us easily. We do not allow anybody to live there. That would just be unwise for obvious reasons. But we do provide programming there during the week. And what we do there, we bought the house about 8 years ago. We were able to pay cash, not that in the hood it costs a lot, but you know, we're a ministry, so we didn't really have a whole lot of money. But we were able to pay cash for the house. And it came well taken care of. The only thing that needed was paint, color. We made it really bright and cheery, and the women loved to come in there. So we started offering different services throughout the week there. We bring the women in from Oriana House now. We've got a great relationship with these people. So we bring them in 2 or 3 times a week for Bible study, for what we call soup and shop, where we provide a meal, we provide clothing, personal items. They get to do their nails there, and they get to have a devotion. And like I said earlier, it's all about relationship. Then we do that a couple of times a week. And I'll tell you a quick story about a girl that I met years ago. And I was teaching Bible study on Fridays because we have this like big free-for-all Friday Bible study. And we just pile everybody in on that day. And it's like a 950 square foot house, and we're just like sardines, and I love it. But I was driving down the street, and I had one of my ladies with me that I had picked up from somewhere, and I'm driving down the street, and I'm just about to the Rahab house, and she screams, "Stop!" And I like ducked. My first, I was like, "What'd you do?" You duck. And I didn't know what she was in. She jumps out of my car and runs up to this house and drags this poor girl off the porch, who was just totally cracked out of her head. Drags her off the porch, opens the back door of my car, and sort of pours her in, and she said, "Okay, let's go." Now what? So we bring her down to the Rahab house, and several of us got her out, put her on this couch in a spare room, closed the door, and I proceeded to have Bible study there. At the end of Bible study, I thought, well, I better go figure out if she's dead or alive. So we go in there, and she was just kind of coming out of a coma state, and found out her name, a little bit about her story, and do you know that that was the last time that girl ever picked up a crack pipe? She didn't hear a word I had to say, but it didn't matter. Someone had stopped on the street and cared enough about her to bring her into that house of safety. And it was soon after that, and we had a great relationship for about 6 months, and she said, "I need to go back to Michigan, where my mother is and my children are." And she's been there ever since, and that's been years. And it's just one of the stories that we get to hear that keeps us getting up every day to want to do more for these women. So we have the Rahab house. Now we have the street outreach, the strip clubs, the house where we have these people, and we're still going into Oriana House to provide services in there. Then, several years ago, somebody came to me and said, well, the whole issue around here is human trafficking. What are you going to do about that? And my heart and my thought process was, well, we're reaching out to the women on the streets that are being prostituted. I can't deal with human trafficking. That just is overwhelming, and I'm busy, and I have too much on my plate, so go find somebody else. That was, and I'm not proud to say that, but that was my mindset at the time. Then somebody said, well, I have a documentary. You want to watch it with me? And I said, fine, I'll do that. And it was called Nefarious. And I didn't realize at the time that Nefarious meant wicked. So I watched this documentary a couple years ago. And it started out of a church in Kansas City. And what it was is a documentary on human trafficking. And they took it around globally. And now, I've been through the global human trafficking in Cambodia and Thailand and Malawi and Ghana and all. Yeah, it's a big, big deal. So I'm watching this, and okay, I'm watching, I'm trying to keep an open mind, but I'm not going back overseas. God has called me to stay here in Northeast Ohio. Then this documentary takes this big turn, and it comes into the United States. And then I got my attention. And it started talking about some of the issues that these women are dealing with in trafficking in the United States. And I'm watching this and going, oh dear Lord, these are the women I serve. And I had separated them. And what I learned, many things, but one of the things that stuck out with me was in the United States, the Department of Justice says that girls enter into prostitution between the ages of 12 and 14. Now, if you have daughters, granddaughters, this ought to make the hair stand up on your neck. When you're 12 years old, you do not wake up one day and say, oh, I think I'll be a prostitute. That doesn't happen. But that's a statistic in our country that is true. And the reason I know that's true is I went back to my women and I said, would you mind if we sat down and talked a little bit about your past, your story, and really engaged in conversation with them? Their stories are horrific. And what they've had to endure. And what happened was they had all, 100% of them, by the way, were between 12 and 14, many of them much younger. Some of them were turned out, and I think you can figure out what that means, by their parents, by their friends, other relatives, neighbors. So they were the victims, right? They were the victims. Then what happens after that is they become the victim. They're 12, 13, 14 years old. They're being turned out. So we had a girl in Bath, where I live, that I met. Cute little girl, goes to Revere High School. Her father turned her out because he needed money for his heroin addiction. She lived right down the street from me. I met her in jail. I had no idea. So it's not just the hood, right? I want you to hear my heart when I tell you that. So after I'm talking to these women, I had to repent. When you guys were 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and you're being abused and sold and raped, nobody was there to rescue you. And I took ownership of that. Nobody was there. And so now you're 20, 25, 40, and you know what we do? We label them. They're a criminal, they're a crack whore, they're a nobody, they're a has-been, they're a lowlife, they chose that life. And we hear that everywhere. I mean, you talk to a sociologist and they'll say that prostitution is the only victimless crime, and I want to throttle them because they know better. So after we're talking to all these women, I'm going, all right, you're right. I wasn't seeing it for what it really is. Human trafficking and prostitution are no different. They're very much the same. And I will go to my death believing that, and because I am in the throes of it with these women every day. So now I'm starting to go, okay, what do we do? What do we do? And I learned that, I don't know, it's probably been less than a year ago, the FBI did a sting operation across the United States. And what they did was they were out rescuing these girls from trafficking. And what I learned after that weekend sting was that they rescued 105 little girls all across the United States. And my question was then, and still is, where'd they take them? Where'd they put them? What kind of help? And you recall the 3 girls in Cleveland that were held hostage for 10 years. What kind of help do they get afterwards? What kind of services are we providing? When you go through that kind of trauma, you don't just get over it overnight or with a 30-day transitional house. And let me tell you another quick story about what happens in our law enforcement. And let me tell you, I'm all for law enforcement. I'm getting to know them quite well. They might be a little cynical sometimes, but for the most part, I've gotten good support from law enforcement. So I'm not saying this to bash on them at all. But there was an incident report in their public record, an incident report in Akron PD several years ago with one of our ladies' arrest record. And so I have a copy of it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at her name, and I know the woman well, and it's got her address, it's got a physical description of her, where she lives, what she was doing, and what her record number is, and what her charges were, everything you want to know about this lady in this particular charge of solicitation. And then in the bottom half, it gives the information for the John, and when I say John, that's the generic term for the man that was buying the sex. They call them Johns, and I apologize to anybody here named John, but that's what they do. So I'm looking at his information, and it was blacked out. It was blacked out. It said 5'10", 165 pounds, that was it. And you know what he did? He went home to his wife and kids. And you know what she did? She went to jail. Now she's got a record. Now she can't get the education she needs. She can't get the job she needs. And we call her the criminal. That's the problem. That's the problem. We need a solution. That's the problem. And the other problem is people don't think it happens here. And it does. It happens all over the United States. And it's a big deal in Ohio. And let me tell you why. Toledo, I'll just throw that out there, is number 2 or 3 city in the United States for human trafficking victims. And there's a couple reasons for that. They're close to Canada, they're close to Michigan. In Michigan, if you are someone buying sex, it's a felony. In Ohio, it's a misdemeanor. So they just have to drive across the bridge, right? And then they don't get caught, or if they do, it's no big deal. Their record gets expunged, they go to John school, and they go on their merry way. So we're not tough enough on these guys. So Toledo's a hot spot. Toledo is also a hot spot because of the freeways through it. It's easy in, easy out. They can bring girls in a lot quicker and hide them well. They can bring them in across the border from Canada, Windsor. Also, this was an interesting fact that I didn't know. In the state of Ohio, we have more truck stops per capita than any state in the United States. It's another hotbed for trafficking victims. The girls, and I don't want to get too graphic, but the one girl that I had met had been rescued from trafficking, and she was literally passed through the windows of the semis from one to the other, and being raped. That's a hotbed. And that's another issue for Ohio and specifically Toledo. But I can also tell you, University of Toledo is on this. They're finding that solution, and they're working hard at it. They don't like being number 2 or 3 in the United States for having the trafficking victims. And then all over Ohio, we've got a lot of really good things going on here, but it also brings a lot of other stuff. If you talk about the PGA tournament, the Football Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we've got casinos, we've got racetracks. Anytime you have a big event, you're going to have the supply and the demand, right? We're bringing the RNC here, and these are all really great things for our state. But we also have to be aware of the other things that are going on behind the scenes. And it requires us getting off our seats and getting out there and doing something. If it's praying for them, then that's it. If it's having an awareness and saying, what can I do to get in there and help with this fight, then do that. You can go online and find tons of information about human trafficking and collaboratives and people that want to do things. And get involved. Get involved. This is an issue that touches all of our lives in one way or another. So, to bring you to what we're doing now and where I feel God's taking us, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. Once we realized and came to terms with the fact that these women are victims of human trafficking, coercion, fraud, manipulation, those are your 3 biggies. I asked the Lord, what can we do? People were asking me, I said nothing, and now I'm asking God, what can I do? We need a safe house. These 105 little girls that were rescued had no place to go. What they're doing now is they're putting them in detention centers, i.e. jail, because they have nowhere else to put them. So we started thinking and talking and planning and praying about what a safe house might look like for these women. And although I can't take you there, I can tell you we did finally open one. And we started this process probably close to 2 years ago now. Last November, we were able to buy a home. And I'm saying this not to brag, but to brag on God. It was over $400,000 we paid cash. And that was the Lord. That certainly was not, I did very little to nothing. I am not one to go out and ask for money. I'm just not good at that. We opened last November, and it's a house that is just absolutely stunning. And I look at this house every time I pull up the driveway, I go, thank you, God. This is what these girls deserve for what they've been through. And I can't tell you how many guys that come and say, what do you want us to do to refurb your house in the hood? But you guys would be so lucky as to live in the house that we have for these girls. It's just phenomenal. And it's in a different county, I'm going to tell you that. And it sits on over 30 acres. And it's absolutely fabulous. So we opened up this house in November. We're filling it more and more. And I can't tell you how many calls I'm getting every week. People that need a place to stay. So that kind of set me for the next vision. My staff wants to kill me because I'm a visionary. And they just can't hold me back. And so I throw these things out there and I said, okay, make it work. And it will. But we have this house which is specifically for adult victims of human trafficking. What my vision is for the next 2 houses is one for the minor victims And then another one that will hold the women with their children, which is something that we don't see very often. And these are very exclusive homes for victims of human trafficking. They come with a different set of issues. And we can't throw them into battered women's shelters or transition homes or sober housing. They need holistic care. And we're doing a lot to help them in many different ways. Some that we outsource, some that we do on property. But they need it all. We can't just put a roof over their head and a meal in front of them and say one and done. We have a lot of work to do in that area. So the next 2 houses I'm really excited about. And we're already seeing some fruit from some of our prayers in those areas. And hope we'll have, well, there's one piece of property that we'll probably buy before the end of this year and start building on that one. And then we have a horse farm. Somebody came to me a couple years ago from Columbiana County. So we've got this big, huge house on this horse farm, and we feel like God wants to use it for something. Could you guys use it? Well, let me get back to you. Yes. So we're going to put the miners out there on the horse farm because these people were so gracious to open up that farm for us. So we've got a lot of work to do. We have a big problem, but we have some solutions, and we want to keep bringing people in like yourself, making you aware of what's going on, letting you know this is a problem in Ohio, it is a problem in Northeast Ohio, and it's not just overseas. So that's where we're at. So if you think about us, pray for us, and if I can answer any of your questions now, I'd be glad to do that.
Talk about the children.
He says, can I talk about the children? And that's a great question that might take me a little longer than 2 minutes. Summit County Juvenile Court contacted us, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, and they said, we're doing a diversion program like they're doing in Lucas County, which is Toledo, for the children that are victims of trafficking. And they came to us and they said, can you help us with the diversion program? I said, well, what does that look like? Well, we have all the pieces to the program in place for the kids, but we don't have a mentoring piece. We need somebody to do the mentoring. Would you consider taking on the mentoring piece? And my first words were, can I talk about Jesus Christ? Because this is the Summit County. And they said, absolutely. I went, you're on. I didn't even have to think about it. We'll do it. So Summit County has detained us for 3 years to be the mentoring piece for their minor victims of trafficking. And behind the scenes, they've done all the work to identify these girls. So we have 2 classes, girls that have already been victimized through trafficking and the girls that are high risk. And we're bringing those together and we're mentoring them now. We started the program several months ago. And what I'm blown away is these girls are just coming out of the woodwork. There's so many more. We started with 2 and then 4, and now we're 10, and now we're 12. And it's amazing to hear their stories. It's heart-wrenching. I want to take them all home. And I know I can't, but I want to take them all home. And what happens is these girls, they get pulled in through many different avenues. If you have a girl that's marginalized in school, that's kind of the outcast, that doesn't get picked for anything, she's going to be looked at by a perpetrator. And the perpetrator could be a young boy her own age. It could be a classmate. They do what we call finesse. And it's not this guerrilla type thing where you yank them out of their house. It's finding a girl that seemingly is unwanted or not loved, and saying to her, "You're just so cute. I really want to. Can I take you out for ice cream?" And then it goes from there. And can I buy you a dress? And they hook them in, and it becomes a psychological bondage, and they can't get out. And then they start, and the boyfriend says, I just have one favor. Would you mind doing something? I'm really kind of broke, and I really need, a few extra dollars, just this one time. Can you just go with this guy just one time? And it happens very slowly. And it becomes a real psychological bondage. And that's what's happening to these girls, and they can't get out. And then they get to this point where you try to bring them out, and all they know is this boyfriend loved them. They don't care that he beat them. He also loved them. So they want to go back to the boyfriend because they want to be loved. It's really, really complicated. And we do, and I said that we have this house open for adult victims of trafficking. We do have a minor there right now because the judge was desperate for her to have something that gives her hope. Her story is just to keep you up at nights. But that's how the girls get involved. And a lot of them, here's a story that just came out in the news. There was somebody that allegedly working in a protective service type agency. And they, just in the last few days, found child pornography on his computer at work. Now he's there as an advocate to help these kids, and now he's a perpetrator. And that's not uncommon. You will see people that are what you would consider a pedophile or a perpetrator working in areas where they can have access to these kids. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Sunday school, whatever it might look like, counseling in schools, children's services, and it's happening all the time. These girls that are running away from foster care are running away from some kind of abuse. It's not because they hate their foster parents, it's because they're being abused there. And the perpetrators, they will go to the mall, they will go to the Greyhound bus station, they know right where to find them, and within hours, these girls are gone. So that was a long answer to a short question. Thank you. Any other questions?
You said you go to church and your church is involved with a lot of this stuff. I also attend Christ Community Chapel here, and I know we've been involved with a lot of human trafficking, and we do this thing called Micah 6:8, where we give money to folks that try to help get girls out of that. What church are you involved in?
Christ Community Chapel. let me just say that, and we are a yeah, right. I go to Highland Square.
Oh, okay.
That's why I different campus, because it starts at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I like that. Christ Community Chapel has been really instrumental in helping Rahab Ministries, and we will be a recipient of the Micah 6:8 and the golf outing, and the cruise in the chapel. If you guys are car buffs, we're having an amazing classic car show at Christ Community Chapel in August, so look for that. All the proceeds go to Rahab. And I'm glad you brought that up, because people want to know where our money comes from. It's amazing churches like this, and like Bill Holmjack's church here in Hudson, the Presbyterian Church, and it's Grace Church in Bath, and it's Akron Baptist Temple, and it's another Grace Church in Barberton. So it takes everybody. So we do get a lot of churches backing us, some financially and some with volunteers, and in other ways. We also have corporations that will back us. We get some little grants, not government grants, because we're faith-based, so that's kind of squirrely there, but we've had some faith-based foundations and organizations that want to grant us some money. And individuals, so that's how we get funded, and it just works. Yes?
Becky, wonderful job. Thank you so much. The Great Decisions program this year has one of its chapters on trafficking, and of course it focuses, as you might guess, on Southeast Asia, and we're talking about very large, very poor families as being the source of this problem. And I'm wondering, if you translate that into Ohio, how do you find the source? Is it, for example, the fact that we have so many, I'll say single moms, broken families is really the point, and maybe unplanned, unwanted children? Now, you've done a wonderful job of going back and finding out that these kids got into it at 12 or younger.
Right.
Have we asked really about the family? Do we have any idea about unwanted children?
We do see a lot of that, and I don't have time to go into a story, but one of the first ladies that I met got pregnant, which most of them do, and she wanted me to be her labor and delivery coach. When you do this kind of business, you do everything. I've done births, funerals, weddings. It's crazy how Father's Day parties, everything. So I agreed, and she had to have a C-section, so I suited up. I was in the OR and saw the baby. I was the first one to see the baby. Children's Services whisked the baby off because she had used during pregnancy. We found a wonderful family in the area that took this baby on as a sort of a foster parent. And he's 9 years old now, and he's doing great. And if we can do that for these kids, it's wonderful. And the reason I just it's kind of hard for me to talk about, because she just passed away. The biological mom passed away a couple of days ago. And it's just a really sad case. But the children, we are so involved in these babies' lives, and we will do everything, even though it's not something we talk about or publicize. A couple of the babies that were born out of our women are that have been adopted by some people at your church, at your campus. And it's been a wonderful situation. But if we can find a way to get to these girls before all this tragedy and all this trauma happens, there's a solution. I mean, we do what we can. But yeah, it's a big problem. And they are unwanted. And one thing that I have found is that these women will continue to have babies because they still think that there's hope. That maybe this one won't be the best baby because it might have some issues going on, or I don't know who the father is. But one day, my knight in shining armor is going to show up, and I'm going to have a baby with him, and I'm going to have a real family. So they keep holding on to that. Because people say, well, why don't they just get their tubes tied, or why don't they go on birth control? It's the hope. And it's sad to say that that's what we're seeing, because these other unwanted babies or these unhealthy babies have to endure their decisions. It's a tough one, and it's heart-wrenching. We've seen a lot of good things come out of it, though. Somebody else? Jim?
What is Rahab? How does that name come from?
That's a great question, and everybody asks me. You'd think after 13 years I would address that right up front. I never do remember. Rahab is R-A-H-A-B, and it's got a twofold reason for being called Rahab, because the name I came up with was ridiculously stupid. But God gave me this, and Rahab is actually in the book of Joshua in the Old Testament, the 2nd chapter, and she's the one that hid the spies before the Israelites came in and took over the Promised Land. And she was the town prostitute. And it's a great story, and I just can't wait to talk to her one-on-one. But she became part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. And if you read, you can read that in Matthew chapter 1. And it's like, all right, God doesn't care where we've been, what we've done. He's going to use us any way he sees fit. So Rahab was a prostitute in the Old Testament. But also, the Lord just kind of showed, I was driving down the highway and it just kind of bing. We had it used as an acronym, Reaching Above Hopelessness and Brokenness. So it's an acronym as well as an Old Testament story. Thanks, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Becky. That was a very interesting discussion, and thank you for doing what you're doing here, to be commended. Also, I'd like to thank our greeter today, Peter Goheen, our audio-visual setup crew, Larry Santon, Tom Page, Jimmy Sutton, who's usually here but not, James Field, and Ron Barnhouse. And handling the video again, Allison Rentz. We'll have a meeting next week, March 18th. Our speaker will be Michael McCleary. He's the Chief Investment Officer at Valmark Securities. He will talk about a look back and a look ahead for investment markets. There is a board meeting today in the mixing place at 8:30, and Craig wanted me to mention that there's a foundation board meeting next week on March 18th. So. Now today's drawing for the Rotobuck. We have $13 payout and $353 for the winner. So I will let Becky draw the winning ticket. And the last three numbers, 727. 727.
Sorry.
Check that out.
That's very interesting.
That's a fiction.
Oh, thank God I didn't get the black.
I thought he would have had it in his hand.
Thank you all. Have a good week.
Yeah.